Alright, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. Let's talk Dark Knight. I'm going to be going over the Dark Knight deck profile that I have right now for some of the support in BT19. We might get more support, but right now with what we have, the last thing that we saw was a couple level 4s that I've decided are just not good enough to make it into the deck. But as for everything else, the stuff with Lord Knight, the new Monotamon, we will be going over that. So let's jump straight into it. First and foremost, you're going to notice that I am playing a lot of Tamers. I'm playing 8 Tamers in total, 4 Nenes, 4 of the other new Nenes. And I will explain this because to a lot of people, you might look at this and be like, you're playing 4 memory setters. I do agree that generally speaking that's not good. You shouldn't play memory setters above 3. I will explain why I think that this is correct. And also why I'm not playing the Kiriha and Nene. Because you could theoretically play 3 of this and then 1 Kiriha and Nene. That's not wrong, but I'll explain why I'm not doing that. But just so that you know, the new support that the deck got really wants you to play a higher Tamer count. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's start breaking down the card by card. First and foremost, we have Monomon. It's the egg. On deletion, if you have a black Tamer, draw 1. So already straight out the gate, you understand why this deck has to play a fair amount of Tamers. We've tried messing around with some non-Nene Tamers, but at the end of the day, Nene is just the best one. None of the other ones really compare, and you should just stick with Nenes. Moving forward, Immortal Ruler. I like the idea of this card at 2. I've tried playing with this card at 2 several times. It's just bricky. This card is perfectly fine as a 1-of. As a 1-of, it's never betrayed me. As more than a 1-of, it's almost always felt like it's betrayed me. This card will end up in your opener if you play it at multiples, and if it ends up in your opener, you're screwed, so don't do that. This card is perfectly fine as a 1-of. You have ways of getting Dark Knights out of the trash and just playing them directly. Lord Knightmon, he literally does it for you. So as much as I like the idea of playing multiples of this card, because now you have multiple Dark Knights that can kind of do different things, like this is theoretically an on-demand pop my opponent's Tamer, but it just breaks, so don't do it. Fist of Athena, I've been switching between 2 and 3 of this card. I think both are good. 3 of the card, it is bricky, but I've liked it pretty much every time I've seen it. Although I did have a match where I was like, man, this could really be something different. So 2 is probably fine. If we're in a format where we really need to force the ace to happen, I would recommend bumping this up to 3. But right now, I think it's totally fine for this card to be at 2. It's just less risky, and I'm all about consistency. That's one thing that you'll notice about me on any deck profile that I'll ever do. Especially for DarkKnightmon, is I want the deck to feel consistent. Sure, you can have crazy cool power plays in there, but if the deck isn't consistent, then it's just not good. I would rather consistently do enough than occasionally do a lot, right? 3-cost Nene, she searches. I still think she's amazing. Well, okay, amazing is like really pushing it. I like her a lot more than I used to, mainly for the fact that the new Dark Knight that you have can pop her to gain 2 memory. I have actually been doing that a lot now that she doesn't have to stay on field to give everything blocker because Lord Knight provides collision, so she feels a lot better. The search is nice. The reason why this isn't just a memory boost is because you need a Tamer so your cards can start saving, so that your egg can start drawing. You need to have a Tamer, right? I hard play her from hand. I don't have an issue hard playing her from hand, and she just feels really good. 4 of the Mem Setter. CJ, why are you playing 4 of the Mem Setter? Let me explain. First off, this deck really likes Mem Setters. Having 3 memory to do literally anything with before you go into a Digicross is really nice. It lets you use Fist of Athena. It lets you play a search. It lets you evolve into either of these guys. It gives you a little bit more freedom in your turn. And it's also why I am still considering bumping this back up to 3. Because just having an extra action to take before you actually commit to a Digicross is really nice. That's really why I want to open with the Mem Setter, because once you have the Mem Setter, like, you're just set for the rest of the game if they don't have a Tamer removal, which I haven't noticed too much Tamer removal recently. So I love opening this card. That's mainly the reason I'm playing it at 4, is because if you open with it, it just gives you so much freedom for so many more turns after that. Your opponent can't choke you. You're not forced to Digicross and pass. Sometimes people will choke you with 2 and you can't even play your monitor, which feels so awful. So call me weird for playing 4 of her. Again, there's nothing wrong with playing 3 of this and then 1 Kira and Nene, but I don't want to open with Kira and Nene ever. With 1 copy, you're probably not going to be opening it very much, and if you do open it, you could probably just mull that hand. But yeah, opening this card is awesome. Again, the logic for 3 and 1 is there. Do that if that's what you like. This is what I like, at least for now. This is prone to changing, but this is what I like for now. I tried the 2 and 2 ratio, where 2 Nene, 2 of the new Nene, and then 2 Kira and Nene, and I just had like 4 matches in a row where I just didn't see any of them for several turns, which made it so that my egg didn't work, which made it so that this guy didn't work, and it just felt awful. So I was like, okay, 6 Tamers, maybe I'm just unlucky, maybe I'm just super unlucky, but yeah, it just didn't work for me. I needed more, so I went ahead and added them. Agumon, he gains you a memory. You could play an Ukomon instead, and it's probably faster. In fact, that's probably what I will do. I'll probably make this 3 Agumon and then 1 Ukomon, just to, you know, crank out damage a little bit faster. Obviously, the reason why I like rookies in Dark Knight is because rookies directly translate to a draw engine, and even more so now that you have this Monomon. Now it's not like RNG, oh, I might hit an option off of Pagumon or whatever. I really like having rookies in DarkKnightmon, so that's why I'm playing 12 of them. 10 of them is fine. 10 worked for me. I also liked 11, but I feel like 12 is pretty much the rookie count that I play in every single deck, so this just feels right for me. Agumon getting you the 1 extra memory so that you can do a Digicross and then still potentially have enough memory for a second Digicross in the same turn is really nice. So, you know, just an extra memory to play with in a game where even 1 memory can be game changing. Yeah, there's really not much to say. You'll never resolve the inherited effect, but yeah, the extra memory that this guy can give you is nice. Again, you could consider playing Uko for this. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that if you play Uko, you can't evolve this or this on top of the Ukomon. So that's the main reason to play Agu over Uko. Moving on, these cards that I famously have never put in my deck, and I'll explain why they probably should be in the deck now. So, Promo Skull Knight was previously probably your best Skull Knight. He would play your Nenes out for free. He does save, and I still am tempted to play him, but I'll explain why I'm not playing him right now. He's really, really slow. There's less incentive to just hard play a card for 4 in this deck, whereas there's more incentive to hard play a Tamer or hard play a Monitor now, right? There's a lot less incentive to just start with this guy. If you don't start with him, then you're probably never going to get to him ever unless you summon him off of Lord Knight. But if you're summoning him off of Lord Knight, then you're not summoning a DarkKnightmon, so that doesn't make a lot of sense. This card is a Knightmon in name, So you could have him in the deck just to have more targets for BT7 Deadly Axe to grab, and I do think that's fine. The main reason why this card sucks, aside from the fact that its main effect is really slow, the Inherited, despite how much more recent it was than a lot of these older cards, the Inherited on this Skull Knight is not future proof. And what I mean by that is it doesn't give the Inherited to any of your bosses. It's basically a vanilla as soon as you upgrade from DarkKnightmon. Dark Knight X is, for some reason, don't ask me why, not a Twilight. LordKnightmon, again, don't ask me why. For some reason, it's not a Twilight. I don't want to hear the lore explanation, whatever the heck. This is a DarkKnightmon card. I think it should have Twilight. At least it should have had, like, rule trait Twilight or something. Just so that we could get the promo Skull Knight to work with it. If it did, this card would still be really good. But right now it's just not, because your bosses can't gain Sec Attack Plus. That's actually why this older Skull Knight has become a lot better, because this card is future proof. So long as the boss has Knightmon in its name, it's going to get Sec Attack Plus. That's awesome. So being able to end games quicker, being able to chew through security faster. I really like being able to just melt through yellow security super early, so that I don't have to worry with them, you know, making it bigger and bigger and bigger, and then making their Seraphimon larger. And it just becomes a headache to deal with Seraphimon Ace, because it's just bouncing any levels that it wants. If you can get that down to like 3 or even 4 security really early, Seraphimon Ace really isn't going to be an issue. So that's why I like this BT7 Skull Knight. The when attacking effect, I've literally never resolved it before until today, I think. Because yeah, it just wasn't good. Full stop, it just wasn't good. What's nice is that the new Dark Knight does trigger when digivolving 2D Digivolve 1. So it's not just a waste. You don't just, when attacking, and then summon a completely vanilla monster that doesn't do anything. It feels a lot better to actually resolve this effect now, so I have gone out of my way to actually try to set up this effect now, because it feels good. You get 2 checks, you get a D-Digivolve, and you get a Darkknightmon that if it dies in security, it gets the float. It feels good. So, and it's a lot easier to set up with some of the newer cards that we have as well. So this card, famously always hated this card, famously never played this in any of my decks because the promo was just way better back then. A lot of people might disagree with me on that, but I'm going to be honest with you. I just think I'm right. However, I will concede now that this card has gotten much better due to the circumstances of the newer cards that we got. So I am an advocate for playing 4 of this. This guy's awesome now. I do like him now. Deadly Axe, have a real love-hate relationship with this card. Friendly reminder that none of the BT7 cards are Twilight, which really sucks. It sucks a lot. This card is theoretically a really good searcher, but it has a tendency to whiff a lot. Sometimes you'll only add 1, and a lot of times you'll add 0. So that's another reason that you might want to keep your Knightmon count relatively high. Expect this card to whiff. You could cut down maybe like an Agumon or something to put in another Skull Knight, but friendly reminder that the options that we have here are not super good for Skull Knights. There is maybe a world where you play Cavalier mode, because Cavalier mode could also be a Deadly Axe. And potentially getting a quick swing in with jamming is nice, but let's be real, this card is kind of old and not amazing anymore. Could still be worth playing, but this guy sucks. Full stop, this card just sucks. And this guy just, yeah, he just really isn't that good anymore. And this card, I don't even want to talk about this card. Moving on. So yeah, Deadly Axe, This is the best one now because it searches you LordKnightmon. But just be prepared for this card to whiff. I've bumped ratios up a lot to make it so that this card doesn't whiff. It'll still whiff. So wholly expect that. But you have to play this card because the one that discards a Twilight to draw 2, that one isn't bad still, but in my opinion, this card is better. This card is the reason why I was able to deal with Tyrant Kabuterimon, because yes, if they do get a lot of sources underneath it that buff it up past 14k, it does become a problem. But if they put out the Tyrant Kabu and it's just at 14k, it does suck. And I'll admit, this really sucks that I had to do this, but it was the only angle that I had to actually win the game, and I did win that game. I summoned a Lord Knight on top of a Deadly Axe so that my Lord Knight was 14k, and then I swung into the Tyrant. Unaffected Tyrant is really, really hard to deal with. So as much as I didn't like it, it was either sit there and wait for all my cards to get spun and he'll just kill me slowly, or this. So yeah. The Inherited for plus 2k is really nice. Again, the main effect will whiff, but the Inherited is super good, so I do recommend playing this card. These two cards are necessary for this, is essentially what I'm trying to say. Because this card exists, and because this card is now such a big part of the deck, you have to play these two. As much as you might not like it. Moving on. This is a flex spot. I really don't guarantee that this will stay. This will probably turn into something else. This could probably be the third of this. Something else. I don't know, man. But this feels like it's fine to have in the deck. Probably just as a one of, just because, you know, if you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. You're not really going to be bricking on this a lot. And I'll be honest with you, the effect to protect has come up multiple times. It's really good. Obviously, this card doesn't have Knightmon in name anywhere. Again, should have been another rule trait, but whatever. But when this card does come up to protect you, it is important. That being said, the new Dark Knight, I'm not going to talk about it too much. I still probably prefer the old one, but this one is good. Being able to pop Tamers. Some matchups, like hybrids, where they just have 4-cost Tamers, this does absolutely nothing. But the matchups where people do play 3-cost Tamers, this card absolutely rips. Then, the Inherited is the only thing that is really competing for the spot in my heart for favorite. Because the Inherited is super good. Before, if you blast Evo'd on top of a BT10 Dark Knight, it felt super bad, because if they were to delete the BT10 Dark Knight, at least he could float. But you've lost your float to summon an ace. Even after Lord Knight came out, it still felt kind of bad, because they could just get rid of the Lord Knight, you lose your Dark Knight float, and you overflow. Now, you blast Evo on top of the new guy, they pop the Lord Knight, and at least, even though you are overflowing, you are summoning a card with a play cost of 4 to kind of offset that. So it feels a lot better. Like, I don't feel super panicky about summoning Lord Knight on top of the new Dark Knight. It actually feels good. I will say that now a new aspect of the deck that I have had to kind of start getting down is which Dark Knight to play at which time. Because a lot of times, both of these guys will do the exact same thing. You'll de-Digivolve something, it becomes 3 play costs, and then you're like, well, I'll just pop it. Okay, but which Dark Knight do you want to use for that? Because reminder that this one, the on deletion is, in my opinion, more restrictive, and this one has an Inherited. You want to save this guy for when you go for the BT7 when attacking Skull Knight plays. You want to save this guy for when you plan on putting an ace on top, etc, etc. So make sure that you are thinking ahead before you just put down any random DarkKnightmon. Moving on, Dark Knight X. This card always felt iffy to me before Lord Knight came out. Now it feels a lot better. I love this card. I really do like this card. It's your way of dealing with 4-cost Tamers. You can still do the thing where you summon it on top of your Dark Knight, pop your own Nene, swing for game after it unsuspends. It's nice. I'll be honest with you, sometimes I don't even swing for game. Sometimes I use it just to get rid of the last security against a yellow player, just so that they have literally nothing left. This card feels really good. Most of the time, you're using it to recycle copies of Lord Knightmon if you don't have any more, so that you can keep doing this really degenerate loop. And when I'm not grabbing Lord Knight, I'm usually just grabbing rookies, because I just like having stuff on my eggs. You just push it out from breeding and it's a free attack that you get to get in, so feels nice. And then Lord Knight. I'm a little back and forth on whether or not I should be playing 4 of this. Last night I played 4 of this and it bricked me to all hell. It didn't feel good at all. Today I played 4 of this and it did feel pretty good. So it's kind of hard to say. I'm gonna keep testing with 4 of it, but I don't necessarily think that 3 is wrong. The thing is, you really need to see at least 1 copy of it. Seeing a second copy in a match can be good, but a lot of times you can just get it back with Lord Knight X, so it's not the end of the world if you don't see a second one. But you do need to see 1. So expect this card to brick you, but you do kind of need to play it at the very least at 3 copies. It just is what it is. So what haven't I covered? I haven't covered this. So the other rookies that aren't Agumon. This monitor is good. The thing about this monitor is it does demand that you play a lot of Tamers. Otherwise, you're really not benefiting that much off of the effect. Especially if you're putting this on top of your egg. You're just whiffing so much of these effects that like you really should just be playing Tamers. This is your new go-to to put on top of your egg. And this one, I can see an argument for playing only 3 of it, but I'm going to be honest with you. This is by far the best searcher that the deck has. Again, I can understand not playing 4 of it, but even today, like I've drawn like literally all 4 copies and I'll just summon all 4 copies. And it feels good every single time. Every single time I summon Monotamon, it feels great. Like, even if it whiffs on adding Skull Knights or Deadly Axes or a Nene, it can still add other Monatas. So yeah, it's just the best searcher, man. Like, it's so awesome. Again, I understand 3, but just trust me, play 4. The card is really good. Especially if you are playing a very high number of the new Mem Setter Nene. You have the extra 3 memory to just perform an action before you Digicross. Might as well get more searches in, you know? More chances to get to Dark Knight X, more chances to get to Lord Knight, more chances to get pieces. And once you have pieces, and once you have the Nene that lets you Digicross using cards in trash, like, you're set. You're so set. It's so good. So yeah, in my opinion, play 4. Don't play 3, play 4. I'll be messing around a bit more. If this becomes too troublesome, I will cut it down to 3 and then put in the 4th Kiriha and Nene. There is a world where you could consider playing Cyberdramon Ace. I honestly am a fan of Cyberdramon Ace, so I want to find room for it. But right now I just don't really feel like I have the space. Maybe 7 Tamers is enough. 6 definitely was not enough for me. Maybe 7 Tamers is enough, but I'll be honest with you, every single time I've opened this, it's just felt super good. So yeah, I could probably brick in multiple copies, but man, once you get the first one down, you just feel like you're ready to go. So that's just me personally. Cyberdramon Ace could be nice, but I'll be honest with you, in this variant of the deck, you're summoning random 4 cost cards less. I feel like you used to do it a lot more before when you had the Deadly Axe that would on play discard draw 2. Nowadays, the only real 4 cost that you're summoning consistently is just going to be in Mighty Axe mode. So it's hard to make a huge argument for Cyberdramon, but I still think it could be good. A lot of people aren't expecting you to play it. A lot of people are really watching out for Lord Knightmon, right? So they'll try to keep you off of 5s, but they might not try to keep you off of 4s. So I'm not saying play a lot of these. Maybe play like 2 of this at the most, and just kind of have it in there as a surprise. They remove your 5, it floats into a 4, they feel safe because they're like, oh, now Lord Knight can't come out. And then you drop a fat Cyberdramon on them, search a Tamer, de-digi them, and they're like, oh my god, what the heck just happened? So yeah, that's kind of my logic with the Cyberdramon. I'll test it out at some point, but right now, I just want to kind of keep messing around with a pretty pure version. This is this is literally 100% pure, except the random Agumon that's in there. And even then, he's not really random. I'd say this card might even be a Dark Knight card. It's really hard to say. We're going to talk a little bit about your flex options. Cyberdramon, a flex option. 3rd copy of this, decent flex option. It depends on the format. This could turn into floodgates. You could play Chumon. Chumon is a floodgate that does not hurt your deck whatsoever, so feel free to put that in if it's just a good format for it. If you're good at managing the amount of memory that you give to your opponent, I have used the Chumon Mickey Mouse Floodgate to just leave my opponents at 1, and then when they try to go for their goofy Imperial play that is super illegal, and I don't know why it exists, where they just gain a bunch of memory, and then they swing, and then it dies, and then they partition, and then they do it again, and you're like, dude, this guy's getting so much memory. Yeah. A lot of times what they'll do is you could choke them at 1, and they'll do the end of turn effect to gain 2 memory back to continue their turn, but if you lock them out of getting that memory back, they can't continue the turn. They'll end of turn DNA, and then nothing will happen, and it'll just pass to your turn, and it feels really good. So you do have to kind of be good at choking your opponent to make sure that they just barely don't have enough memory to do anything with it. And the Mickey Mouse Floodgate can be really good. And then when you de-digivolve their Paildramon, it'll turn into a 4. A 4 cost 4. Or actually, I think XBmon and Stingmon might both be 5 costs. But the point is that they're 5 costs. So DarkKnightmon can pop them, which is awesome. They don't continue their turn. You pop their Paildramon. They don't get to summon their ace. Because, like, that's really where it becomes a problem. They summon the Paildramon, they swing twice, it has partition, and then they summon an ace on top of it. And you're like, wow, I hate my life. Another option you could play, it's a necessary evil if, for whatever reason, something like... what's that deck called? The really cringe one that just completely beats this deck? Royal Knights, that's the one. If Royal Knights ever comes back into the format, you don't really have a choice. You're probably going to have to play the Floodgate Chikuramon. If you're smart, you can play Chikuramon without it affecting you too much. Most of the time when I play Chikuramon, it hasn't given me issues when I'm playing it in this deck. But I'll say, it totally has potential to mess you up. I've had a lot of matches, this is mainly with other decks, where I'll play Chikuramon, and then I'll just have a Death X in my hand, and I'm like, wow, I really just screwed myself. So, it's up to you, right? Right now, Royal Knights are not big in the format, so I wouldn't worry about it too much, but just be aware that if, for whatever reason, something like that did come back into the format, start practicing with Chikuramon, to make sure that you're not messing up your own plays, because that is a necessary evil. Right now, though, with no particular huge threat in mind, Agumon is perfectly fine. But this can change. Again, this could also become an Ukomon. Right now, Ukomon is limited, so you can only play one of it. But one Ukomon is probably totally fun. And in fact, like I said, it's probably what I am going to be doing. I just don't want to mess with the deck profile too much while I'm giving it, like, showcasing it. 2 Dark Knight X feels good. This could change. You could cut this down to 3. 4 and 4, I'm not actually sure if 4 and 4 is the right ratio. You could mess with this a little bit, but it's felt all right for me so far. Yes, these guys can brick now. Before, they were much less prone to bricking because you only had the one guy. But 8 level 5s, obviously these can brick. But right now I do like 4 and 4. It feels good right now. If this changes, I'll probably post another deck profile where I explain why things are changing. But right now this is good. This hasn't bothered me too much. But yeah, to be honest, this deck doesn't have a lot of space. You could change some things around here and there to get like an extra 2 or 3 cards in, but it's going to be rough. And I think for the most part, what I have here is like 95% correct. Like, I really don't think you should be deviating from what I have here all that much. Sure, you can play like 10 rookies, that's fine. Sure, you can maybe play like 7 Tamers. I really don't think less than 7 is correct, but whatever. Sure, you could bump this up to 3. I still like it at 3. Don't play this card at 2. Just discard. This card is perfectly fine at 1, and it will brick you at 2. Just trust me. I've done a lot of testing with this deck. Don't bump this to 2. You might not play this. I'll tell you how I feel about it. Right now it feels okay. Haven't done too much testing with it because obviously at 1 it doesn't come up often. Consider playing Cyberdramon. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I think this card really is preference. I like it. I've liked it in the past. But just keep in mind, if you are going to play this, you should be playing at least 7 Tamers. And yeah, that's pretty much everything that I have to talk about right now with Dark Knight. Hopefully we can get maybe some sort of option card that works with Twilight, Knightmon, DeadlyAxemon, whatever. I wanted to include everything. I don't just want it to say like Twilight or just Knightmon. At least if it says Knightmon in text, it's fine, because Knightmon in text seems to be relatively future-proof. But yeah, cards that just say like Knightmon in its name, obviously that sucks. So we'll see. We might not get any more support. I was a little disappointed, I'm not gonna lie, when the super cool looking like Angel Nene or whatever came out, and she was a white card that doesn't help DarkKnightmon at all whatsoever. There is like a Shademon that plays Nene for free, but it looked really weird. I can maybe consider doing some testing with it, just because searching and then also potentially playing Nene for free could be really nice, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm willing to test it. I don't want to dismiss it entirely just out the gate without doing any testing, because I feel like that's presumptuous and kind of ignorant. So I will, but right now I want to say that this deck list that I have right now, it functions so awesome. This has beaten a lot of matchups that I'm super iffy on. Haven't faced Royal Knight with it yet because thankfully no one plays that deck that much. This probably struggles against like D-Reaper or something. I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much, but I feel like the D-Reaper matchup in my head just isn't going to go well. Especially with the new cards that I got. But yeah, I like this deck. I really hope that other people will like this deck. The new cards that we got are not OP by any means, but I think that's fine. I didn't really want DarkKnightmon to become OP in the first place because I feel like a huge part of this deck is that it's super skill expressive. I kind of like being the underdog. I don't know, it's just cool to me. I don't really know what Bandai's deal is with making villain decks generally feel worse than hero decks. I feel like it should be the other way around, like the heroes should be the underdogs or whatever. I don't know. Probably for some like stupid marketing reasons. But yeah, that's everything.